Good morning, everybody. This is Nikki. Today is Taste Life Nutrition Radio and Podcast, streaming live on KUHSdenver.com, where we are going to continue our conversation about gut health, the microbiome, and how it can impact us, how we can manage it, how we can repair it, and how it impacts really everything that we are, right? There's so much to it. And so, which is why we've done a 3-part series on it, and probably will continue. I know next week we have a guest, but we'll probably continue as we go and as I'm doing this on my own, because there is so much to talk about, and I just continue to learn so much. So I want to share what I know, so you can share it. That's all the point in all of this, right? So as always, though, we start the show with gratitude. So I was able to take the week off last week. We do this every year with my husband's family, where there's been anywhere from 40 to, at one time there was 65. Now that included some friends, but this year we had about 45 of us. We go to approximately the same place every year to go and chill out in the mountains. My husband's family, they're big fly fisher men and women, and we just go as deep as we can, so there's no Wi-Fi, there's no reception, so there's no phones, and there's a lot of food and a lot of fun and a lot of hiking and fishing and playing with dogs and reading and just doing the things that are so restorative, and that's how I feel, is restored. So it was so good to be there. It's always good to get back. Always grateful to jump back into life and seeing clients and patients and building, continuing to build what we're building with Taste Life Nutrition and with Immuno Wellness and with ViveWell, and just having a lot of fun with all of that. So let's see. I'm going to start in, I think, the recap. We talked a lot about, the germ theory versus the terrain theory. And, early on there was, and there still is, there's this thought that we have to be afraid of germs because it's the germs that impact us, where if we have a strong microbiome, which is the terrain, then we have the ability to manage the germs that come in and invade, right? And some of them aren't really that problematic. They're there. We just need to be able to manage them, right? So we talked a lot about, oh gosh, I clean my glasses, I can't see anything. So, this time around, I want to dig into how the brain, the immune system, the gut, and what I said in the promo and in the title was our spirit. And I think our spirit is really so all-encompassing. It's our mental health, it's our emotional health, it's who we are at our core, and then it's our spiritual well-being, our spiritual belonging. What are our belief systems? Because so much of that can impact our health, and it can impact our gut health, and it can impact our microbiome. So when one or more of these pieces are missing, if that's the case, then sometimes it just makes things more difficult to actually fully repair and fully find that place of optimal health that we want to experience. Because when we are experiencing optimal health, we feel like we can do anything, right? But if we're sick, if we're not feeling well, if we're constantly having GI pains or having to run to the bathroom or whatever the case may be, then makes life really hard, and it makes you unmotivated. And so that's really, it's no way to live. And so that's what I pray for when I work with any of my clients or patients, as well as anybody else who's struggling, is that you're able to find what it is, or the multiple things that are able to help you get to that place where you feel like you can just go and conquer the world, which is an amazing place to be, right? So one of the things that we'll talk about is if we're just sitting here chasing symptoms, which happens a lot. We're chasing symptoms, or we're managing symptoms with drugs, and we're not finding the underlying root cause, or, you know, I'll finish that statement, underlying root cause, then we're just kind of going in circles and chasing our tail, right? I was having a conversation with someone about that the other day, totally off topic, but she has a situation where, well, I'll just say, I mean, she's got breast implants, and I think that she's struggling with breast implant illness. She has GI dysfunction, she has brain fog, she has a fungal overload. I think she had that prior too, but breast implants are super problematic. And so this is not at all off topic, actually, because you can, you know, breast implant disease is this whole host of symptoms, and we don't often put them to the implants. And so, you know, with these massive GI symptoms that she's having, we finally, as we start digging in, you know, she didn't put it in her intake form, but then when she told me about it, I was like, holy smokes. And she's had the implants for 10 years, and the majority of her symptoms have been over the last 10 years. So, you know, this goes to starting to put together the pieces of the puzzle, and, you know, the why behind what's going on. And so, you know, we can work with her and help her to manage her symptoms. We can give supplements, we can give peptides, we can do things to help manage symptoms. But the likelihood is, I don't know this for sure, but the likelihood is, if she doesn't have an explant procedure, then her symptoms won't go away. They will just be managed, and she will continue to suffer and will continue to spiral, because the body will continue to fight these implants. And yes, they're silicone, but the outside of it is, I'm sorry, they're saline, but the outside is still silicone. These are still so bad. I've worked with other clients who have had breast implant disease. I go to conferences now, and this is such a huge part of the conferences when, you know, the speakers who come up and talk about breast implant disease, because it's so problematic. The metals that we see, the toxins, and then, you know, like I said, it just causes this, and this is what I see probably most of the time, besides the symptoms, or, you know, the outward symptoms, but it's an intense fungal overgrowth. And so, you know, if we have our, you know, our body, our immune system fighting something that is not naturally supposed to be there, then things are going to go haywire. And so I'll take that outside of even breast implants into other types of replacements and other types of implants. So think of hip replacement therapies, think of knee replacement therapies, think of other unnatural type of implants that we put in the body. Many times it's important and it's necessary, and I get that. But what's also important is, if you start having these symptoms, you've got to start thinking about when the symptoms started, and is there, say, in hip or knee replacements, there are metals, nickel. People are allergic to nickel. There are other types of metals that can come up. If we were to do a heavy metal panel and see that they're high, well, holy smokes, that's what's in their implant. And so I've seen that several times too, where people had a knee replacement and they come back and they're like, I'm so sick and I don't know. And you have to kind of go back and again, ask the questions and put the story together. You have to help people put the story together, because you never assume, most people never assume that that's what it is from that procedure. So think about those things when you are struggling with whatever symptoms you have. You know, it might be something that just seems so off the wall that it just doesn't seem possible, and maybe it is. The other things, you know, when we talk about spirit, if we are not systems in our faith, whatever that faith is for you, right? I obviously have my own faith. I'm a Christian, but I think that if we are sort of, you know, kind of going back and forth and unsure, and we're all over the place, you know, you can feel that. I felt it, not with my faith necessarily, but with, with work, right? You kind of feel like you're floundering, you don't know which way to go, and you're all over the place. And this is super stressful to the body, to the heart, to the spirit, to everything we are. And, over time can create a lot of stress, which is going to elevate glucose, which is going to, create inflammation. It's the cycle that we talk about all the time that can happen. All of these things disrupting the microbiome. So we want to make sure that we're doing our best to look at all areas of life. Relationships, right? If we're struggling in relationships, it's going to cause stress, which is going to elevate glucose, which is going to cause inflammation, and it's going to disrupt the microbiome. You can do that with financial stressors, with you name it. Stress period. That's what it's going to do. Chronic disease is a stressor, right? So you can see that it just goes round and round and round, and continues to perpetuate, and then starts to spiral. So, if you haven't done it already, and if you're struggling, you might think about putting together a timeline with your symptoms and other things that happened in your life, whether it was surgery or traumatic experiences or whatever the case may be, because they all play a role. So another patient that I was talking with last week, no, it was this week, who was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and she was like, how and why does this happen? Well, there are lots of factors involved in something like this. It's autoimmune condition, but you still, one of her comments was, as we're talking through her situation, it was, now I know it's autoimmune, and I know there's nothing you can do about it, and I know there's no way to know where it comes from, but, and then she kind of went on, and so she had this thought process that there's no way of knowing the why behind what's going on, which I fully disagree with, and we certainly talked about that. Now, we might not know the exact trigger, but we can look back at her history and see that she was in a moldy home for 4 years through college. We can look back at her history and see that when she was vaccinated as a child, she had reactions. We can look back, I'm trying to remember some of these things that are just this constant insult on the immune system and on the microbiome. There was something else. I think multiple antibiotics maybe. And so certainly disruptive to the microbiome, which is disruptive to the immune system. So, and she wasn't having a lot of symptoms, but ended up in the hospital with this condition. And she's like, now I've just got to figure out how to manage it. And the thing to remember about autoimmune conditions is, especially for women, because of our hormones, I think it's mostly because of our hormones. Do we truly know? I don't know. Do we? Who knows? But I think that's what we sort of assume. But, our hormones, as we go through, as we go through puberty, and then as we go through fertility and pregnancy, and then as we go through perimenopause, and then as we go through menopause, our hormones are all over the place. Hormones are communicators, right? And so that's a natural process, but if they're not balanced going into it, then it's certainly going to create a lot of issues as you're going through these massive hormonal fluctuations. And so when somebody has an autoimmune condition going into these, what is a potential, significant fluctuation, then the autoimmune conditions can just go haywire, right? And so more happen, and more symptoms, and more things, and so you can end up going, throughout your life not understanding why you have multiple autoimmune conditions, but it's because of a lot of factors. But you didn't manage the GI, you didn't manage the insults on the immune system and the GI, you didn't manage or maybe you tried to and it was just difficult to, right? This is not a throwing stones. This is try to take it back to basics and understand where you are now, and you kind of take those steps backwards in order to go forward, to have an understanding, so you can start to unwind. I mean, it's kind of what I say a lot of times, is we just got to unwind all of this that has happened and all this that's going on, and it can, it took years probably to get there, and can probably take years to unwind it, but you can do it, and you can do some of it fairly quickly and start feeling better fairly quickly. And what does that mean? you know, some people might notice a change in a month. So it might take some people a year or 2 years. You know, one round of antibiotics, take this to heart. One round of antibiotics can take you 3 years to come back to a place of normalcy with your microbiome. That is huge. Yeah, so it's important to just to look at all areas of life, right? So I think we want to make sure that we're starting to understand this more and more, but we talk about, you know, in conventional medicine we have this very compartmentalized approach to health and wellness, or to disease. That's what I would say. It'd be to disease, right? So you have cardiology, and you have nephrology, and you have neurology, and everything. This is my lane, and this is the only lane I stay in. That's your lane, you stay in that lane, and there's no coming together, and there's no partnership on all of these systems that work together, right? Nothing works in a vacuum. They are not compartmentalized, and that's how we're treated. Now, there's a lot of times, you know, especially in acute situations where that is absolutely needed. We need somebody who knows the heart inside and out if we're struggling with an MI or a heart attack, right? We need to know somebody who knows neurology if we are dealing with, you know, neurological symptoms. Those are things we need to know. But we have to remember to ask, why are we having those neurological symptoms in the first place? You know, is brain fog a neurological symptom, or is it gut infection, right? Is dizziness a neurological symptom, or is it dehydration? You know, we can go on the list to talk about toxins, right? Are you having neurological symptoms due to heavy metals? Are you having neurological symptoms due to breast implants? Are you having neurological symptoms? I mean, again, we can go on and on and on. So putting all the pieces of the puzzle together from a holistic perspective is what's going to be the most beneficial in getting you to a place where where you want to be, right? So let's see. So the gut, the brain, the immune system are in constant communication, right? Which is so cool, because we have 70, I think most people will say 70%. I've heard 70 to 80% of our immune system is in our gut, right? And so and we've also heard we have a gut-brain connection, or a gut-brain axis. We have all kinds of axes in our body because everything's connected. So cool. I mean, the gut-skin axis, right? The hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal axis, right? I mean, you just go on and on with all of these things that are connected, and you could probably just go down the list and have one big axis because it's all connected. But when we look at the gut and the brain, you know, I have some friends who are chiropractors, and they're like, it's the brain-gut axis, and I always say it's the gut-brain axis. And so, you know, to me, they're both just right here. You know, one is not necessarily more important than the other. They may do a couple of different things, but they work together so succinctly and beautifully, and they communicate with each other. And when that communication's not there, that's when things go haywire, right? So we have the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is what connects our gut and our brain. It also innervates our heart, innervates our lungs. And so, you know, you talk about, you know, the gut-heart connection, the brain-heart connection, because of the vagus nerve. And, you know, when you have a gut feeling, you know, it's because of the vagus nerve. You know, all of these things are things that we should not just throw out the window, or we should listen to them. You know, when we talk about our heart, you know, it's so important. It's our physical heart, but it's also our emotional heart. And so we can often go into a situation, you know, we're talking a few minutes ago about stress. Stress is so key because it keeps our vagus nerve in a sympathetic nervous system mode, right? So it's a sympathetic mode, which means you are in that drive. You are fight or flight. You're always stressed. You're always going, and that's where we sit so often as a society. Is we sit in this sympathetic, where we're supposed to sit most of the time in the parasympathetic, which is our rest and digest. And it's how we are calm, and it's how we think well, and it's how we manage life well, is in this rest and digest. And if you think about it, when we are in fight or flight, all of the much of our blood goes to the extremities, because we have to make quick movements, right? We're not thinking well usually, but we have to make quick movements. It's a run, or it's a fight, or it's a whatever it might be. If we're in rest or digest, all the blood goes to the core. A lot of the blood goes to the core, right? So you have the ability to calm. You've got good blood flow to the brain. You've got good blood flow to the core, to your GI, so you can break down and utilize nutrients. Everything is calm. So what can happen to this nerve is that it essentially, because of the constant stress, the constant fight or flight, it dysfunctions. Does it dysfunction, or does it just shut down? Is this a protective mechanism? If you know me, if you listen to me much at all, you know that I believe that the body is so beautifully and amazingly smart that I don't know that I don't believe that it's dysfunctional. I believe that it's doing what it knows how to do to keep us alive at that moment in time with what it's been given, right? So if you're nutrient deficient, it's not getting the nutrients that it needs. So it's doing what it knows to do at that time without those nutrients. And so that's the stuff that we want to bear in mind with symptoms. Is symptoms are signals. Symptoms are the body talking to us. It's telling us, I need you, and I need you to figure out what's going on, because I can't do this on my own anymore. It's just trying to keep you alive. It's these red flags. Call it what you want. But it's a strategy that the body uses to get your attention, to get my attention, to say something's not right, we need to fix it, and we need to dig in and find out what that is. And so a lot of times, if we listen, if we are in tuned enough with our body, we know what it is. But sometimes it's really hard, right? And so that's where labs can come in. Labs are our bodies talking to us on a piece of paper. It's the most amazing thing. We can get so much out of a good set of labs. And we have these functional labs that are so specific, but they'll give you reports that are 10 or 30 or 50 pages long. They give us so much information. Okay, now we can have a direction, and you put them all together, and now we have a direction, right? It's fascinating stuff. So getting back to the vagus nerve, if it's constantly in this fight or flight mode where it's not functioning well, so you start to have these GI symptoms because you're not absorbing your nutrients, and because your vagus nerve is not functioning properly, and because it's sitting in this shut down place, and you are just now constantly revved up. So and you kind of go into this, and there's the adrenal glands going there, and then the thyroid gland, and the pituitary, and all of these endocrine systems, and then you wonder why your hormones are out of whack, right? So again, it's that downward spiral, and that connection. Everything's connected. Our hormones are communicators. Our hormones are going to tell our body what to do. If they're not functioning properly, our body's going to be like, I don't know what to do. So anyway, cool stuff. So we also have what are called these immune signals. If you have you've probably by now heard the term cytokine. Before COVID, I think that wasn't a word that was as mainstream as it is now, which is super cool that people know what a cytokine is now. But you can have inflammatory, you can have anti-inflammatory cytokines. But when we heard about it through COVID, we heard the cytokine storm, and it's this crazy inflammatory thing that happened with the respiratory system in the lungs, right? And so we were trying to mitigate these cytokine storms. Well, cytokines are signals. And so they are, signals within the immune system that help us to understand and manage immune function, and it helps us understand what the immune system's trying to say. So then we have, neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are also communicators, right? They are our, we've got like serotonin, our happy neurotransmitter. 90% of it is produced in the gut. So if our gut's out of whack, what's going to happen with our neurotransmitters, and specifically our serotonin, right? And so we have these balances with our neurotransmitters, and if one's off, the others could likely be off. And I have to throw in here too that neurotransmitters are made from amino acids. Amino acids come from protein. They come from other things as well. But when we talk about complete proteins, they are broken down and then used to build neurotransmitters, enzymes, and other things, our muscles. But I think it's really important to note here the protein need of the human body. There's a really big push at understanding protein that is needed for us. And I don't know, I've heard it more and more over the last few years. And I'll be quite honest with you that I didn't realize, because I'm genetically, I can look at it and I can see that I need less protein. I don't feel like I need as much protein as I believe I actually do. So we're all different genetically, and knowing our genetics and what our needs are, it can be a key player in our overall health, especially when we're looking at biohacking and things like that. But I would get 50, 60, maybe 70 grams of protein in a day for probably most of my life. I'm just, it's hard to get in the amount of protein, which is a gram or 1.2 grams per body weight for people. And so it's a lot of protein, right? If I'm 125 pounds, that's 125 grams of protein plus, I go to the gym, I work out, I'm active, and so it feels like it's a lot of protein. But I also have a much better body composition since I've increased my protein, which is fascinating. But you got to think about this going back to neurotransmitters. You have to be able to break down these proteins in the GI properly with a well-functioning GI, utilize those amino acids in order for them to be built up into whatever they're going to need to be built up into. And so the neurotransmitters are key, so having the amino acids for neurotransmitters is super important. Enzymes. So when we talk about enzymes, a lot of times, what we think about are like digestive enzymes, right? Sure, we have digestive enzymes, they help break down our food, but we have enzyme activity throughout the entire body. I mean, enzymes are catalysts, so enzymes are what push pathways and keep them moving forward, keep pathways moving forward, whether it's metabolic pathways, whatever it is. Enzymes are catalysts moving those things, moving pathways forward so we can function well. And so we can have, epigenetically, we can have some of these enzymes that don't function as well as we hope. That's life, it's the way that we're made, so we just, we manage it, right? When we know it, we can manage it. And so if we see that we have some of these pathways that are not functioning as well as they maybe could, think of MTHFR, right? So a lot of you by this time have heard the term MTHFR. It's a SNP. It's a folate SNP, and so it can mean that you don't want synthetic folate, which nobody wants synthetic folate. It can be problematic for anyone, but more problematic for somebody with an MTHFR SNP. MTHFR can play a role in fertility or lack thereof. There are lots of areas where MTHFR plays a role. So essentially, if we know that we have this MTHFR SNP and which one we have, then we start to know how to manage it. Okay, I need methylfolate, right? And maybe for some people, methylfolate is too much, so you need the hydroxylfolate or the adenosyl, not folate, sorry, I just went into my other vitamin, my B12 vitamin, never mind. Either way, the methylfolate might be better for you than a folic acid, which again, never ever ever use folic acid, it's synthetic. But some people will experience pretty significant symptoms with a folic acid and others won't. But folic acid will inhibit the uptake of natural folate. So taking folic acid is problematic if you're trying to get pregnant, if you are pregnant, if you have kiddos, just stay away from folic acid. It's a huge, huge problem. So anyway, but making sure that you have that pathway working and functioning properly is key, right? So you're managing what you've been given, and it's great. It's awesome. So let's see, what else do we have? So let's move on, I think. Oh, so we did just hit on some of this. So, okay, here's one. Talked a little bit about, let's go back real quick and expand a bit on serotonin, because we were talking about neurotransmitters, and I just said that the gut produces 90% of serotonin. It also plays a role in dopamine, GABA, and melatonin, which are all critical for mood, clarity, and calm. And so that's when I was saying that they're all all of the neurotransmitters are related to a degree, then that's kind of that's what I was talking about. I didn't say it as well as as my notes say, but that's what I meant. And so important to have a good healthy gut, so you have good healthy neurotransmitters, but also eating your protein, right? Let's see. Chronic stress and trauma can literally shrink the gut lining, disrupt microbes, and impair digestion and neurotransmitter production. So it's important to just manage your stress. And I know it's not always easy to do, but the things that we say all the time: take the time for prayer, take the time to listen, take the time to be still, take the time to sit alone for a while, take the time to eat your food slowly and calmly, and either alone or with someone, with the TV off, away from your computer. Anything that you can do if you are in a place where if you have a chronically stressful situation or multiple situations, you have to take care of yourself and find that time, because you don't want things to go haywire, because they will. And so I find, I say this all the time, but what I find for me is going outside and sitting in the sun. I may pray a little bit, but that's my time to be quiet and to listen. It's my be still time. And I want to hear, it's when I hope that I'm going to hear, I don't know, whatever I'm supposed to hear at that time, right? So I listen for God's words for me and for guidance and whatever it is I need guidance for. So I hope I do that all the time, but I know I don't. It's a practice for sure. All right, so let's see. So yeah, we kind of already hit on this, but I do think it's an important point that with the gut immune connection, 70 to 80% of immune cells live in the gut lining. This is where tolerance is trained, learning what's friend or foe. So if your immune cells are in the gut and your microbiome is healthy, this is, when we're talking about tolerance, right? So if we lose tolerance, whether we can lose tolerance to food, we can start to have allergies, we start, kind of going down those roads. That's when we start to see that there's some dysfunction. Allergies are not normal. I know that lots and lots of people have them. I have had a couple of situations myself, right? But you got to remember that it's a sign. What does that mean? Is there infection somewhere? Is there an issue with gut integrity, right? Is your immune system not functioning properly for whatever reason? So take that as a sign. If your allergies are getting worse, that's a sign something's getting worse. So support that gut. So leaky gut, we have talked about this 100 times. I think so many people know what it is by now, but I run into still so many who don't really get what it means. And so for just real quick, our gut lining, so it is our epithelium, is in our gut, is actually our epithelium. Our cells are supposed to be super, super tight, right? Nothing is supposed to get through until it goes way down into the capillaries where it's supposed to get into and get into the bloodstream. With leaky gut, what happens is zonulin goes up. It's a protein. Zonulin goes up, and our gut comes apart, and things can get into the cells come apart, but things can get into the bloodstream sooner than they're supposed to. And so when that happens, the body doesn't recognize them. It's like, I don't know what this is. It's not supposed to be here. Red flags all over the place, and an inflammation, leading off into what can be an autoimmune condition potentially, right? If it's a chronic leaky gut situation. But there are things that are microbial. So we have what's called lipopolysaccharides that are produced by microbes, pathogenic microbes in the body. And they can get into the bloodstream. And, I think though, yes, LPS does this, but it can also be bugs, it can be fungus, it can be viruses, it can be whatever is in the GI, metals and molds and toxins and all of these things, whatever is in the GI that's getting into the bloodstream is going to cause an immune response and cause problems. So, things to watch for, we kind of talked about this, autoimmune flares, food sensitivities, skin issues, brain fog, joint pain. There are things that we can do. I think, so probably one of the next sessions where I'm doing the show by myself, what I want to do, and I'm hoping by the time we get a couple of weeks down the road that I'll have a good handle on this. But there are things that we can do in our own kitchen that can be super therapeutic for building our microbiome. Now we've got to be really careful with it for those especially who are struggling with GI symptoms, because it can really push symptoms, right? So we want to be really careful with how we do this. But I want to dig into this myself and start to do some of these. I've already started doing some of them myself, but there are other things that I want to do that I want to be able to come and talk to you about, so you can do at home. Probiotics are great. They're expensive, especially when you're getting these really, high strains and, these well-studied strains. What if we can make these ourselves, which I think is super freaking cool. So that's the stuff that I want to talk about, but I got to do it first. So anyway, there are great gut lining nutrients, which is true. So zinc carnosine specifically is great for the gut lining, L-glutamine, and collagen. Now, zinc carnosine. So zinc carnosine is zinc linked to an amino acid carnosine. The two of them together go into the gut lining and really help to support it. Really good data behind it. But you still have to be careful with your zinc copper ratio, right? Glutamine. Glutamine it's an amino acid, but it also is turned into a neurotransmitter, right? And so you have glutamine that converts, so we talked about pathways, right? And enzymes that push these pathways. Glutamine is catalyzed, converted into glutamate. So what can happen though is if you eat a lot of glutamine, and if you have a SNP or a variant or an enzyme that's not functioning properly, right, due to this genetic SNP, and glutamate stays elevated, then it's excitatory. And so it creates brain inflammation, so it can create anxiety. It can create, the ADD, ADHD thing, right? So some people know that they're sensitive to monosodium glutamate. It's a toxin anyway, so I think most people should stay away from it, but some people are super sensitive to it for that reason. What's supposed to happen is glutamine is supposed to then be catalyzed or converted into GABA, which is calming. And so GABA is that calming neurotransmitter that where it's supposed to, and then it moves on, down the pathway. So we want to keep that in mind if we're struggling with any kind of anxiety. Anxiety is an inflammatory condition. Depression is an inflammatory condition. ADD, ADHD, these are inflammatory conditions. These are all stemmed from inflammation, so we've got to ask why. It's not about taking SSRIs. I think these are really problematic. Now, doesn't mean that some people don't benefit from them for a time, and that's fine. We have these drugs for acute situations and sometimes for chronic situations, yes. But what if we can start to manage these symptoms by understanding the why behind the inflammatory response in the first place? That would be my hope, is that we can start to think about it that way. Collagen is a tricky little nutrient. It's not a complete protein. I think it's missing one, I don't remember which one of the amino acids to be a complete protein. It's also not well absorbed. And so I think that there is some collagen that is better absorbed. I believe that I have understood, I should have looked into this deeper before coming in, but I believe the collagen peptides are the least absorbed. I hope I'm not lying to you, so I probably shouldn't have said it, but that's what I think is the case. What we actually need, more than just taking a bunch of collagen and spending money on a bunch of collagen and hoping that it's going to help our hair grow and benefit our GI and all of these things, it might have some benefit, and I know some people who have had some benefit with their hair and their nails and that kind of thing. But what we actually need, we need the nutrients that build our own collagen. So we don't want to have to take the collagen in because we're just going to have to break it down and then we got to utilize it, right? So things like vitamin C. Vitamin C is really important for building collagen. So think about that. Vitamin C also has the shortest half-life of any other nutrient. So if you take vitamin C regularly, I think that in almost every panel I've ever seen, vitamin C is low, but probably because we just need to take it in regularly. So it's in a lot of fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. But if you are taking it supplementally, think about taking it, 1,000 milligrams in the morning, 1,000 milligrams in the afternoon, 1,000 milligrams in the evening. It does have some bowel tolerance issues, so you might want to be careful with that. But or you do 500 morning, afternoon, and evening. So whatever it is that works for you. But think about the fact that if you were just to take if you're doing high dose 5,000 milligrams all at one time, you might have to run to the bathroom, but it just goes away really fast. So you want to spread it out. Okay. Oh, wrong one. So this is an interesting one too. And when we talk about diets, diets are hard. For one, I hate the word diet. Diet when I put someone on a diet, it's therapeutic, right? Does it need to be short-term FODMAP, low FODMAP diet? That to me is a diet because it's therapeutic. A low FODMAP diet, I'm not going to get into it right now because I just don't have the time, but it's all of these really beneficial starches and like oligosaccharides and all of these things that feed our microbiome, but for some people can be problematic. If you've got bacteria in the wrong place, you're feeding it, then it starts to do its job and it hurts. So but these are all beneficial nutrients that we should be getting that feed our microbiome, that help with the diversity of our microbiome. It's so important is to have this really diverse microbiome. So if we're going low FODMAP, some people have been told they just always have to eat low FODMAP. It's not doing anything but managing symptoms, and in time will disrupt the benefits or disrupt the microbiome because you're not getting the benefits of all of these different types of starches and sugars. So I think they're just all starches. Sorry, they're not sugars. But what can also happen, so there are things like there's AIP diet. So autoimmune paleo or autoimmune protocol is a diet that is really important for autoimmune patients with autoimmune disease, especially early on, and maybe even through the entirety of their life, right? So it's therapeutic. What else do we have? Here's an interesting one, and you can argue with me all day. Anything's totally fine because I've been kind of on the fence with all of this. There are people in the functional medicine world who believe that carnivore diet is the end-all be-all. There are people who believe that it's terrible. There are people who are like, well, maybe every now and then. People who have had amazing benefits from doing a carnivore diet, which I get, because if you're taking out all of the bad stuff and, vegetables and fruits and these anti-nutrients that can cause pain and discomfort, if you're taking all of this stuff out, because that's what can happen, then, and you're feeling better, you're like, oh, well, this is the diet for me. Great, except you're completely disrupting your microbiome. If you don't have the ability to digest certain things, it's likely because of an imbalance in your microbiome. So if you're only eating meat, you're changing your microbiome to such a degree that you're probably, bringing in other stuff is going to just be really hard. So we want to create the diversity in the microbiome, and it's not always easy. It takes time. And it's not just about throwing a bunch of probiotics at it, right? You've got to be strategic about it. But I think I've even tried carnivore. So, I'll try just about anything, and I'll research it and, kind of see what I feel to be, what I, in my research, and those who I trust, believe to be good, solid data, good, solid information. But I don't think that I don't believe it to be a good long-term plan at all. Short-term maybe, but not long-term. Same with the keto diet. I don't think that it's a good long-term plan. I think it's good short-term, except for the fact that those with epilepsy have shown really great benefit from it. And so there are those times when you've got to manage that piece of it, right? And so everybody's unique and everybody's different. Ideally, we eat good food, we eat real food from the earth. Does that include grains? I come to, more and more I come to, no, I think grains don't give us anything of benefit for the most part. We can get plenty of good healthy carbs from lots of other places. We've got great root vegetables and sweet potatoes and, but just eating a bunch of rice or eating a bunch of quinoa, I think, maybe some people are built for some of those grains, but I think for the most part it really doesn't do us any good. Just, spikes blood sugar. That's my feeling at this point. I don't think it gives us much. All right. So this is a cool section on biofeedback, and as I was doing my research on this, I was learning some really fun things. So I just kind of want to go through and list some of these things out. I might even put together like a resource sheet. I have all of these tons and tons and tons of these resource sheets that I share with clients and patients, on a regular basis. And this one, I was like, this is a really cool one that I think is super helpful for helping us learn what our body is trying to tell us. So oftentimes we hear biofeedback because they're biofeedback machines, right? So a lot of the machines, you're holding on to a couple of metal things, and I don't totally get it, but it's based on the energetics of the body. We're all based on energy. Our earth is based on energy. It's all electricity, right? So I believe it is how, if there's the energetics, say you're looking for a specific microbe, right? So there's the energetics of the microbe, you're holding on to these metal sticks, and it can match the energetics of the microbe if you have it in your body. I probably, I don't, like I said, I don't fully understand it. I've done it, but it was a long time ago. I would like to dig deeper into it, honestly, so I could have a better understanding of it. But people love it. I think it's a great way of understanding the body, understanding your body specifically. But if you don't do that, because I know there can be an expense to it, obviously, machines like that, the software, they're really expensive, but I think they're pretty cool. So, if we're looking at biofeedback from the body, if we ask what it is in the first place, so it's real-time communication from your body about how it's responding to food, stress, sleep, and spiritual alignment. And you can access it for free daily. So cool. Okay, so the things that we might look at. So if you're looking at food, so gut feedback, if you have bloating, there can be fermentation. So fermentation is not a good thing, especially if you're not going to the bathroom every day. Fermentation dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of the good and the bad bugs. Poor motility, you're not moving properly, right? You're not moving things out of the body like you're supposed to be moving them. Ideally, we go to the bathroom every time we eat, right? 3 times a day. You go to the bathroom 3 times a day. These days, it's not. I'm working on that. It's part of my increasing my fiber intake, like significantly. You know, people will ask. Again, going back to my story, but it's kind of funny. I'm right in the middle of it. You know, I would get in, 6 or 10 grams of fiber a day. So I'm now up to 40, 45 grams of fiber. And there are little tricks that I'm learning to do this, which is another thing that I want to share, but that's what I'm in the middle of right now. I was working on it. But, there are some cultures who would eat 90 grams of fiber a day. And how do you do that? It's a hard thing to do when you look at, if you get some paleo fiber, it's a brand, right? Paleo fiber, and a scoop of it's 5 grams of fiber. Like, how do you get 45, 65, 95 grams of fiber in a day? Anyway, that's one that we all, I think, need to work on, but will help with motility and help with us going multiple times a day like we're supposed to. So fatigue after meals are blood sugar issues, poor bile output. So if our gallbladder is not functioning properly, you can be, or if you don't have one at all, right? And if you eat a high-fat diet, you're going to go, oh, and then it can hurt, right? So if you don't have a gallbladder, you have to take a digestive enzyme with high in lipase. You have to do it. Nobody's ever told that. I don't know why. It's as simple as it can be, but you have to take your digestive enzyme that's high in lipase. Let's see, sugar cravings, serotonin imbalance, right? So serotonin, our happy neurotransmitter, there can be an imbalance there. So if our body's craving serotonin, it might be actually, or craving sugar, it might be it's actually just needs a boost. It needs some serotonin. So do we need to work on your gut? You don't need to eat the sugar, right? That's not what it's all about. But also can be low nutrient density. Let's see, burping or fullness, low stomach acid happens a lot. So hydrochloric acid, which if you're low in hydrochloric acid, you're not going to break down. Oh my goodness, we are so at the end of our time, but I'm going to keep going. If you don't have stomach acid, you don't break down your proteins well. You're not protected from microbes and from pathogens that can come in through the mouth. So that's a really important one to keep an eye on. And then stress while eating. So that means don't fight while you're eating, don't watch TV while you're eating, don't work while you're eating, right? Take the time to be still. Let's see, I have a bunch of these, so I'm going to go through just a couple of them here. So stool, so what's your stool look like if you're constipated, sluggish liver, dehydration, lack of fiber or vagal tone. We talked about the vagus nerve, loose stools, inflammation, histamine reaction, and microbial imbalance. I think all of these could be a microbial imbalance. Floating stool, fat malabsorption, so it could be digestive enzymes, could it be gallbladder dysfunction. Clay-colored stool is gallbladder or liver dysfunction, so think about that. Anxiety can be gut inflammation, trauma, histamine overload, right? When you think about that, glutamate, that also can be a problem. That can be an epigenetic SNP. Brain fog, LPS, right? Those lipopolysaccharides that we talked about that come from microbes. Poor detox, lack of sleep, and so many other things. I mean, brain fog is just rampant. Insomnia, cortisol imbalance, overstimulation, nervous system dysregulation, certainly hormones and cycle, endocrine feedback. PMS is most likely estrogen dominance or slow liver detox, and I'd say probably both of those together. And just watching what you're putting in your mouth, putting on your skin, what's in your environment. The xenoestrogens in our environment are creating so many issues and really increasing our estrogens, synthetic estrogens at that, and creating such problems with estrogen dominance for men and for women. So no ovulation, under eating, stress, thyroid dysfunction, hot flashes, can be blood sugar or cortisol dysregulation or liver overload. It's an interesting one. And then this is the last one. Interesting. So spiritual feedback, fear, control, over research. I research everything. Nervous system locked in survival. All right. numbness or fatigue, burnout or disconnected from God, peace and clarity, safety, alignment, and rhythm. So I think I have to stop there. I have 2 more sections I could go through, but that's okay. We'll stop there. And I did it again. I forgot to talk about our sponsor. I did talk about her during our promo, but I do want to make sure that we hit on this because for a couple of reasons it's really important. This is the same sponsor with the same products that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. So Susan Drake with Mountain Medical Concepts she has products that are specifically for practitioners that are so amazing. She has several lines of them, but the ones that we've been talking about are peptides through NuBioAge. And these specific peptides are called Guttides. And so these Guttides are specific to gut health and gut function. I have a couple of, I'm just starting to get into this, so I'm super excited about it, but I have a couple who are going to start doing these Guttides. Other things are going to need to be done as well, but they're super supportive and can really ramp up the process of the repair of the GI. And so Guttides include BP157, which is not only just a Guttide, it's called body protective compound, and it's the data behind it's so fascinating. I mean, it's for mitochondrial support, it's for brain function, it's for it can be for autoimmune conditions and inflammation. I mean, the list goes on and on. So that's kind of that sort of the main, if I were to say this, sort of this main overarching peptide that most people kind of start with is the BP157 because it does so many things, but it's super great for the gut. So we also have lorazepatide. Lorazepatide is great and specific to the gut. So that's a great one. And then what we didn't talk about, which we should have, but we did talk about it last week, are short-chain fatty acids. And so one of the Guttides, or one of the supplements that goes along with these Guttides is butyrate. Butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid. It is protective of the gut lining. We eat foods like resistant starches, cooked and cooled potatoes, green plantains, green bananas, things like that. Those are resistant starches, and they feed our microbiome. They feed specific bugs in our microbiome. And then when they get those, they also then poop them out, which then supports our gut lining. So one of the most beneficial things we can do is make sure that we are rich and robust in short-chain fatty acids, and many of us aren't. So we can get some of these through food. You can get green banana flour, right, if that's something that you want to do, and you can cook with it. So think about that. Think about eating plantains. They have to be green and raw. And same with bananas. They literally have to be green, not eating yellow, but green raw bananas. So there's no sugar in them, right? It's all of these resistant starches that is beneficial to our microbiome. So it's food. It might not be the best tasting food, but it's still food. So those are the things that are inexpensive and easy to get that can help to support your microbiome. But therapeutically, when necessary, which is often necessary, we go to things like the supplemental butyrate, the supplemental short-chain fatty acids, and then these peptides, these Guttides that can be, like I said, it can just really ramp up that process of repair to help people feel better, because it's not fun. You know, having gut issues is not a fun thing, and it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. I talk to people, it's every day. It literally is every day. So, all right, I think that's all I got. Look up Susan at Mountain Medical Concepts, especially if you're a provider or a practitioner. But if you're not, ask your provider for NuBioAge peptides, and specifically through Mountain Medical Concepts, because she's working really hard to bring the best products to providers that she can. So she's great, appreciate her a ton and all that she's doing. And I appreciate you. Thanks for joining me. I know next week we will be on another topic. I can't remember, I should know this, but I can't remember right now who's coming up. But you'll see it as we post it, and then you'll always find us here, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live on the one and only KUHSdenver.com. We are a global station. We are heard all over the world, which is really kind of crazy cool. But you can find me at tastelifenutrition.com, Taste Life Nutrition, and all of the, the social media, all of that stuff. So would love to hear from you. If you have questions about anything, feel free to reach out. You can go to the website and fill out the assessment that's online. I'm working on some other things to start to have on there. That's some fun stuff coming up, so we'll start talking about some of that stuff as well. But you can fill out that assessment for the time being, and we can chat a little bit and see how we might be able to help you, or if I know somebody who can help you, because I know some pretty great people, lots of good people who come on this show with me. So let me know if there's anything that I can do for you, and we'll see you next week, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, streaming live right here on KUHSdenver.com. Bye.